Call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Committee of Adjustment meeting of January 21st, 2020. My name is Ron Chatta, Committee Chair for today's meeting. This meeting is the Committee of Adjustment. The Committee of Adjustment is composed of 5 citizen members who are appointed by the Brampton City Council. The committee is authorized by Ontario Planning Act to consider applications for minor variance from the provision of the City of Brampton zoning bylaw. The committee also consider applications for consent, sometimes referred to as land division applications, which include severing a new lot from an existing lot, a lot addition, easement, mortgages, or leases in excess of 21 years. I would like to introduce the committee members. To my immediate left member, Desiree Roffler. To my far left member, Rod Power. To my immediate right member, David Koch. And my name is Ron Chatta, Committee Chair. Member Anna Cristina Marcus is absent from today's meeting and has sent her regrets. Seated at the table in front of the committee is Ms. Jeannie Meyer, Secretary Treasurer of the Committee of Adjustment. And seated near the podium, we have city staff members who will assist the committee today. Staff, could you please introduce yourself?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Through you, my name is Elizabeth Corazola. I'm the Manager of Zoning and Signed Bylaw Services.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is David Vandenberg, Manager of Development Services.
Stephen Dykstra, Development Planner.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Kevin Freeman, Development Planner.
My name is Ying Xiao, Development Planner.
Thank you. I was only looking at the right till you spoke. So anyway, before we consider today's application, the committee has some procedural matter to take care of. The first is the adoptions of the minutes for the meeting held on January 7th, 2020. The minutes are present in today's agenda. Committee members, any question, concern, or comment? Seeing none, looking for a motion to accept these minutes. Motion by Mr. Power, seconded by Mr. Cope. All in favor? Carried. The next item we have is declaration of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. Does any member have a declaration of any pecuniary interest to declare on any matter being discussed today? Seeing none. Now we move on to withdrawals and deferrals. We have in today's agenda, we have one written request so far. Application A19-099, 62 Progress Court. Does anybody present here? Sir? If you can please come forward.
Good morning, committee. Fausto Cortez, the applicant for this application.
Okay, you want to add something beside your letter?
Yeah, so basically at our last committee hearing, the owner was in talks with the neighbor to try to purchase the neighboring property. Obviously, that would solve pretty much 100% of the issues on the site. Talks were going very well, like extremely well, and at the last moment, so they said they had worked out an agreement, and the gentleman said, okay, we're just going to go on holidays together, and we're just going to talk it through, and we'll get back after holidays, and we'll finalize everything. So it looked great. We were already, trying to discuss how to improve the site to eliminate as many variances as we possibly could. And when they came back from vacation, they basically said, no, we're not selling the land to you. It was a shock. We didn't understand what was happening. The older generation had told the younger generation that they were not interested in selling the land after all, and it died. So that was a week and a half ago. Right away, we reached out to the planner. We had indicated to him what had happened. We were a little bit blindsided. We didn't see it coming. So we hadn't prepared in terms of making any sort of recommendations to modify the sites to eliminate any variances without the adjacent lands. And basically that's the request for the deferral for now. So we've spoken to planning, as they've said to us numerous times, without a significant change to the building, they would not be in support, which we understand. So we're now looking for a short deferral to see how we have to modify the building in order to eliminate some of the variances and gain staff support.
So what you're looking in the future is to amend your application or something, or whatever you can rectify and...
Yeah, so the variances that we're requesting, actually, from what I gather, or from our discussions with planning, the actual variances to this application most likely will stand, right? Majority of the variances will still be in effect. However, staff is not supporting the application because they feel the property has been overbuilt, and basically because we can't maneuver a tractor trailer on site without reversing from the road. So they feel that adds to the, and that's basically why they're not supporting the application. So our intent is to make a modification to the building in order to allow for those items to happen. However, the effect on the variances might be none, right? But it will be a modification to the building for sure, in order to facilitate some of the things that planning has asked from us in order to gain their support.
Okay.
Because our application here actually, only speaks to, rear yard setbacks, front yard landscaping, things of that nature, parking. So those variances might actually still stay in effect. However, we may modify the building in a way that we can maneuver a truck on site.
Okay. You're asking for roughly around 60 days, 2 months from now. Let me just, committee members, any question, comment, concern at this point before I go to staff? No. Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your thoughts about the extension of 60 days and possibility of amending or rectifying some of the concerns staff has? Sorry, we all do.
Through the chair, this application has been ongoing since 2015. Since that time, we had a pre-consultation and then a formal site plan application come in around 2015. And that was due to an order to comply because the builder or the owner had built an addition without any building permits. Since that time, we've had no modifications to the building. We've had no interest from the applicant to modify the building in any way to meet city recommendations. This is a completely new idea that they would even be modifying the building in any way. At this point, we would like to stay with our recommendation for refusal. After that point, if the applicant does make any modifications to the building, then they could come in with a future minor variance application that would then recognize the new build format that they're proposing. At this time, though, we have no commitment. We have nothing in front of us for the last 4 or 5 years that's shown any indication that they would make any modifications to the building. So at this point, we would stick with our recommendation for refusal. You can make your decision at this meeting or defer. It's up to you guys, obviously. And then it can be up to the applicant as to what they would like to proceed in the future, whether they come in with a new site plan application or modify their site plan application in any way, and then they can provide us with a revised minor variance application at this time. I think we've spent a substantial amount of time on this minor variance application, and feel that a deferral at this point is not appropriate.
Thank you, sir. You want to say something?
Yeah. So From the beginning of this application, we've been very clear why we can't modify the building. There's a process line in the building which takes up the entire addition, and it's very specific to the processing line. It's it is the only steel beam manufacturing line in Canada, and really, the client's reluctance to revise the building is because he would need to move the line. And in moving the line, he loses the jobs. He loses the jobs of the people who've created the company. So I've spoken to the client. I told him you need to stop making emotional decisions, and now it's a business decision. If we have to modify the building, the line has to move. The people lose their jobs. However, the reality is that this is the only way you're going to get an approval here, according to staff. So that is the real reason why we never wanted to modify the building. The fundamental requirement of the building is to house the line. Without the line, we wouldn't have built the building, the client wouldn't have built the addition without the processing line. So there's a fundamental reason why it's not like we were trying to be disrespectful in any way or saying, you know what, we're going to be hard-headed, we're not going to modify the building. The building's shape is a result of the processing line. So that's where we are now. So the client's basically made the decision. He's going to move the line to St. Catharines, and how much of the building changes really depends on whether he stays here or not. That's the bottom line.
So, in 60 days, what your client or yourself is requesting, initially you mentioned that you likes to come with the new revised plan or the
Yes.
proposal. That's what you wants to come back, or in these 60 days, your client is just considering options that what we can do in orders. Because what I listen to staff and I understand where they are coming from, because this is ongoing matter. Obviously not in front of committee since 2015. We got to hear, I guess, some point last year. At some point it came to the committee, but as Mr. Dextra mentioned, pre-consultation meetings began, and then obviously when pre-consultation meetings were there and your client chose to go without any approvals and construct, and staff has a position to maintain, and which obviously no one likes to go.
We understand.
Right?
We understand.
That was your client's business decision at that time. I guess now they are thinking opposite way in terms of with all the emotions and stuff.
We would love to keep the line here. We've been trying to keep the line here. I think we've done a great job in dealing with all the technical aspects of the project. However, there's only one item that we cannot overcome, and that is the fact that planning has the position, transportation has the position that the truck needs to maneuver on site, which we understand. However, the reality, like I've tried to explain numerous times to both transportation and planning, is that regardless of whether the trucks can rotate on site or maneuver on site, in facilities such as this, they will back up from the road regardless.
Yeah.
The door, the processing door is at the front. There's no way that the truck is going to drive through the building. It's going to reverse from the street onto the building. And if you stand there in the cul-de-sac, which I've said to planning many times, they should go and stand and watch for
We have done.
right.
Yeah.
So you can see that it happens on all these properties on this cul-de-sac. They're all manufacturing facilities, they're all steel fabricators. It happens on every facility. So we understand that. But the client wanted to keep the line here. He was committed to his staff that created his company, and he wanted to do everything he possibly could to do that. He spent a numerous amounts of thousands and thousands of dollars to do all these reports and all these engineering drawings to try to facilitate keeping the line here. However, planning has indicated even if we get committee decision, they would not support it as site plan. So now we're at the position where we're, we've gone as far as we can. If we're not gonna have planning support, then the application won't go through. And so the client said, I've tried everything I can. What else can I do? So at this point in time, he's had to make the business decision. And he's left it to me, like, try to salvage as much as we can of the facility. If we can't, then we'll, I guess, I don't know. At that point, I guess he's gonna have to decide whether to move all of it or not. You know, it'd be nice to keep a little, I've told him it'd be nice to keep a little fabrication shop here to be close to the GTA to facilitate your projects and move the sin line to St. Catharines with the other sin line.
I do understand the situation on cul-de-sac, and sometime even if there is a space, but the neighbor, having said that, the industrial area, if one business owner is leaving maybe a trailer, I have seen oftentimes in the industrial area on the road for a few hours, and then another one is getting in. It's not necessarily from the same business owner, but that could be neighbor. And we see these hurdles in turns and stuff, especially when we are dealing with the trucks and stuff. I know and I understand very well the staff's position, where they are coming from. However, I do agree with them on the majority of the things they mentioned, and as staff tried their best since 2015 to work with the application. But at the same time, I don't think it's appropriate if by having another 2.5 months, if we refuse this application or make our decision today, and you go through the entire new process and with the new filing fee and everything. But I do understand there's lots of work for even clerk's office to send out all the notices and stuff all around the neighbors. So as long we are expecting to have some changes and some, I don't want to say discussion, like not the repeated discussions, whatever the new discussions we can have. In the future, I am okay with the deferral because it's not just a small thing. Obviously, it's for the greater good, and I would say the term. I don't want to sound like politician, but for the public interest, I'm okay for another deferral. So if we can do our best while we make our judgment either today or in the future. And I would say be in touch with the staff. I oftentimes go and visit some other business. I get to see, many other municipalities, people who work with, and I'm very proud that, in our capacity here and at the staff, the customer service is really good.
I've committed in the letter to have a plan in front of planning in the next 2 weeks so we can start dialogue. I've already met with both transportation, my engineering team, to see how we can start modifying the plan to best facilitate the variances and staff's concerns. So, I stand behind the letter. We're committed to having the plan in front of them in 2 weeks.
So before I ask my committee members has any question, and then I would love to, if everything is fine, I would love to finalize the date. Obviously, we need to ask the staff for if any new information, what are the filing deadlines, so all parties are clear by when, if any new information is coming, need to be submitted, and which dates available for us. Committee members, any additional discussions, or or committee feels I should ask Ms. Myers what are our options, looking at roughly around 60 days, and by when we have any deadline for the new information? Any question, comment, concern, committee members? Seeing none. Ms. Myers, if you can please help us, roughly around 60 days from now, what are the dates available? I believe April the 11th is one of the date, or in the March won't work, or, I think in March we have 2 meetings. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Through the chair,
Yeah.
if we're targeting a time frame of approximately 60 days, that would take us to the hearing set for March 24th,
Mhm.
recognizing that the filing deadline is February 25th.
Mhm.
Following that, if the committee wishes to go further, the next hearing date would be April 14th, with a filing deadline set for March 17th.
So March 17th is for the April hearing, and then for the March 24th is February sometime,
February 25th, I'm good with that. March 24th, I'm fine.
March 24th, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to defer this applications to March 24th hearing. Motion by Mr. Koch, seconded by Ms. Duffler. All in favor?
Thank you, committee. Have a good day.
Thank you. So that was the only written request for withdrawal or deferral. Anybody else here in the audience, any applicant like to withdraw or defer, asking for a deferral? Seeing none. For those unfamiliar with the Committee of Adjustment procedure and process, I would like to give a brief explanation and scope. Following some procedural matter that we have already undergone, the Secretary Treasurer will call the applications by announcing the application number, the name of the applicant, and address of the property subject to the application. The applicant or authorized agent representing the applicant will then come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and then they present the application. I request that you reserve any question or comment pertaining to the staff report until after planning staff has had an opportunity to present. If there is anyone in attendance who wishes to speak to a particular application, you will be given the opportunity to do so when the application is presented. Any decision made here today may be appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, previously through the Ontario Municipal Board. Appeal received in the city clerk's office associated with minor variance and consent application will be processed and forwarded to Elpac. This process may be commenced with Secretary Treasurer by filing a completed appeal form and filing fee within the prescribed 20-day appeal period. Information pertaining to the appeal process may be obtained by contacting the Secretary Treasurer within the city clerk's office. Now we move on to new consent applications.
Calling application B19028, Unique Builders, Inc. The property is located at 10612 Gore Drive.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the committee. My name is Jason Alfonso, Glenn Schnarr and Associates, Inc. We are planning consultants on behalf of Unique Builders, Inc., owner of the subject property. The property is located on the west side of Gore Drive, south of Countryside Drive, and municipally known as 10612 Gore Drive. The property is currently occupied by an existing detached dwelling with driveway access to Gore. It's designated executive residential in the Vales of Hamburg secondary plan, and recently zoned to permit detached dwellings with a minimum frontage of 15.5 meters and minimum lot area of 456 square meters. The applicant is proposing to sever the property into 2 lots to construct 2 new detached dwellings and establish mutual access easements over the retained and severed parcels. The proposed mutual access easement is intended to facilitate the proposed shared driveway connection to Gore Drive and allow for a future shared driveway access and connection to the potential extension of Nelly Court to the south. So both the proposed retained severed parcels have a lot width of approximately 15.6 meters and a lot area of 730 square meters and comply with the minimum lot width and area requirements of the zoning bylaw. In my opinion, the proposed severance and easements meet the criteria to grant severance under the Planning Act, and as such, we're seeking committee's approval of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through Mr. Chair, the application is supportable, subject to the following conditions being imposed. The owner shall prepare or submit a tree evaluation report to the satisfaction of Commissioner of Public Works and Engineering. 2, the owner shall convey at the owner's expense a 5-meter temporary grading easement to the city along the entire frontage of Gore Drive from both the severed and retained lands in priority to all other encumbrances to the satisfaction of the Commissioner of Public Works and Engineering. 3, the arrangements are made satisfactory to the Commissioner of Public Works and Engineering for mutual access easement for the interim driveway providing access to Gore Drive for both the retained and severed lands. And prior to issuance of certificate of the Secretary Treasurer, the owner be required to enter into a consent agreement for both the severed retained lands. The consent agreement shall be registered on title to the land subject to the application in priority to other encumbrances, to the satisfaction of the Commissioner of Planning and Development Services and the city solicitor. The consent agreement shall generally include the provisions including, but not limited to, the following. A, upon the city's notification of the completion of Nelly Court extension, the owner agrees to construct an access to the cul-de-sac for both the severed and the retained parcels within 1 year of the notification and shall be responsible for all costs related to the access. B, following the construction of the access to Nelly Court cul-de-sac to the city's satisfaction, the owner agrees to remove the temporary shared driveway access to Goreway and reinstate the boulevard, sidewalk, and curbs within 90 days at the owner's expense to the satisfaction of the city. C, upon the completion of Nelly Court extension, the owner of the retained lands agreed to register an access easement in favor of the owner of the severed lands in order to in order for the severed lot to obtain access to Nelly Court. D, the owner provide the securities requested by staff based on the cost of removing the interim access to Goreway Road, reinstate the boulevard, and construction of the driveway access to Nelly Court for the anticipated works. E, the owner of the retained and severed lots shall equally be responsible for the obligations in this agreement unless alternative arrangements agreeable to each owner and to the satisfaction to the city are reached. F, upon request of the city, the owner shall agree to provide an easement to access to Nelly Court in favor of the neighboring properties to the immediate north. The addresses are 10632 and 10622 Goreway Drive. Thanks.
Thank you. That was long recommendations, right? Well, that's good. I like this idea for the future driveway from Nelly Court. The parcel north from this property got severed, and I see houses got built, 2 of them. That was about a couple of years back. It would have been probably nice to see all the applications together, so maybe the driveway for the remaining 2 properties on the north through Nelly Court as well, to avoid direct driveways backing onto the Goreway. So anyway, I think this is a really good setup if they are willing to develop in that fashion. Any question, comment, concern? Seeing none. Sir, do you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes.
Okay, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support staff recommendation by Mr. Power, seconded by Mr. Offler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
applications B19-029 and related application A19-218. The property is owned by Eugene Jurisic, and the property is located at 8395 Credit View Road.
I was actually checking about that one as well. If somebody from the technical team can maybe look into it, the projector is not working.
Not necessary. It's okay. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of committee,
Morning.
city staff, members of the public. My name is Mark Denardis. I'm a planning associate from Gagnon and Walker Domes Urban Planners. We are the authorized agent of the owner of the property at 8395 Cuddy Road. We filed a consent to sever application and related minor variance application in December 10th, 2019. The proposal is to sever the existing property into two properties. The minor variance application is really necessary to recognize the existing non-conforming condition at Churchville Road, up in the corner here. I have had an opportunity to review the staff recommendation reports as well as the comments from the Credit Valley Conservation Authority as well as the Region Appeal. I find the conditions acceptable. My one concern, which staff will probably elaborate on, was related to condition number 1, which dealt with the road conveyance along Credit View Road. Simply put, there is an existing metal fence and masonry column located within the lands to be dedicated to the city of Brampton, and my one request would be that the owner be permitted to enter into an encroachment agreement with the municipality to allow those that fence and columns to exist until such time if the road ever gets widened. So at this time, happy to answer any questions that committee members may have.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Can members any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak? Yeah, please come forward with your name and address and your concerns.
Hi, good morning, members. My name is Tushar Mahendra. I'm a resident of 8307 Credit View Road, and it's one of the houses that the severed portion is going to back onto. So, of course, I moved into the area and I'm sorry, this might be a bit of an emotional speech. You know, I'm not very familiar with the technical aspects of but, you know, it's my house, and I moved there about 8 years ago. And since I moved there, I've seen the Witchwood, subdivision come up. I've seen everything north of El Dorado get dug up and built, more recently on Churchville Road. And now older houses are being torn down, and, you know, these big, huge houses are being constructed. I did send in a picture of one of those houses.
We have your letter.
Perfect. So, so my main concern is, again, the destruction of just, trees and natural land. Like the house that was built across from me, truckloads of trees were shipped out every day, and actually shipped to my neighbor because he deals with wood. The light and if you take a look at the picture I sent, when it lights up at night, whereas before I could stand out and look at the sunset, now I have to deal with the light glare from this house. The traffic on Credit Bureau, like 8 years ago when I moved into the area, this was supposed to be a conservation area, and, it was a heritage road. So my main concern with the severance is, again, as much as I could understand from the application, it's for a single dwelling. Is there any way in the future, this is with all due respect to the existing landowner. I mean, these are just questions I'm asking, because like I said, my house backs onto this area. Can multiple dwellings be? That is my concern, that, the whole area is going to get dug up, and, subdivisions are going to be put in. If you look at the gradient of the land, especially behind my house, I can't even understand how construction is going to take place. It would require a lot of reworking of the land. Again, cutting down of trees. The road needs to be, Walnut Road is a private road. I don't know if that's where the access is going to go through. So my main concern is, loss of privacy for my house. And if there is construction, could, the committee ensure that there's going to be a line of privacy trees, maybe 3 rows, just to ensure that, privacy of my house and other neighbors that I've spoken to is maintained. And lighting restrictions so that there's no excessive lighting, noise, all that. Those are my concerns. But if you travel the area, you'll see, the effects that the construction is having. The first 3 years when I moved into my house, I don't know if it's because of the construction happening but I used to have 8 deer come and, kind of sleep in my backyard. And I just, I just don't understand where they're going to build the house. That's one concern, because it's going to need excessive reworking of the gradient of land. And in the future, does this open up the possibility that multiple dwellings and, can be, once this land is severed, can it be re-severed and, new applications submitted for multiple dwellings? That's my main concern, sir. I just,
So, what we will do, staff is going to answer your concerns.
Perfect.
I would suggest you to be here close by.
Sure.
And if you have, even once they give you some answer, if you further need some more clarification,
Sure.
you can always come forward.
Okay.
And even after the meeting, if you need to meet, or you can exchange the card and you can write it down to them, or you can come and see them.
Sure.
However, in terms of severance, it's always anybody is allowed to make an application. But
I understand.
city has a procedure to and the staff, and that's why we are sitting here
I know.
to look into all the things. Your concerns regarding the trees and the conservation lands, Credit Valley Conservation is fully involved, and that is another step that, and for any construction, if it's rather any conservation area we are backing into, we need separate approval from them.
Absolutely.
Even somebody wants to make an addition, they want to extend their existing dwelling, or any new business they want to carry.
Understood.
So that is one another channel beside the city. They have, the applicant has to deal with them separately. Obviously, all parties are under one communication channel, so one
Sure.
party knows what are the correspondence with another party. So we do have letters from Credit Valley Conservation as well
Okay.
in this matter, and mainly what you have the concern for the privacy and for the severance, what can happen, or in the future if it can be severed into multiple times. That's what your
That's one of my concerns.
well,
too,
that's
yeah.
one of your concern. And in terms of construction, is it going to be one house or 2 houses or multiple houses?
Yes.
Or by any other means? So that's, if I understand correctly,
Yes,
that's
that's one of
your
my
second
concerns.
concern,
And
right?
in the end, if the committee does have to approve, like I said, I don't know what the exact procedures, but if we could ensure that the landowner puts in, at least 3 rows of privacy trees, so that, the privacy of my house is maintained, I would appreciate that.
Where exactly your house is?
It's, I have it marked down here, like on my
We,
thing here.
I get it. We have one colored image.
There
Mr.
it is.
Dinaris?
That's my house there, if you can see it,
Okay,
right there.
yeah. We have, we'll see another image. We have in our package.
Sure.
With the nice looking color picture, I would say. So, your house is what?
I
in
can't really see from, yeah, it's right there at the border of where these,
Yeah, no problem. So, if you can please step aside, we'll
Sure.
ask if anyone else has any question or
Sure.
concern. and then staff will be answering the questions, and if you have any other concern, you can always raise your
Sure.
hand and come forward.
Absolutely. So we wait here?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else, any concerned neighbor for this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your recommendations, and if you can answer their concerns, the neighbor come forward.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, in an effort to answer some of the questions from the resident and to address some of their concerns, hopefully, any structure that the applicant is, or the owner is proposing to build on the property would be subject to a future planning application. The land use permissions for the property as they exist today would allow for a single detached dwelling. With that said, if the applicant were looking to construct a single detached dwelling on the property, they would have to submit an application for a custom home review. That would also be subject to TRCA permit and review, as well as CVC, as CVC is indicated in their letter. Anything beyond that, if the applicant were looking to further subdivide the property by way of a consent application or plan of subdivision, it would be subject to those applications. Staff would review those applications just as we would any other application and determine whether or not we feel that it is appropriate. So with that said, staff are recommending approval of both the consent application and the minor variance application, subject to 3 conditions associated with the consent application. Condition 1, that a 5.4 meter road allowance for widening along the entire Credit View Road frontage towards the ultimate right-of-way designation of 26 meters or 13 meters from the center line of the right-of-way be gratuitously conveyed to the city of Brampton from the retained lands. Condition 2, that the owner provide confirmation of an access easement for Walnut Road extending to Upper Churchville Road through the severed lands in favor of 8261 Walnut Road to the satisfaction of the Legal Services Division. And 3, that the 2 variances associated with the severed parcel proposed under minor variance application A19-218 be approved. We've also since had a chance to discuss with the applicant. They intend on maintaining the existing columns and decorative metal fence along the Credit View Road frontage. So we are agreeable to introduce a 4th condition. That condition being that the owner enter into an encroachment agreement with the city of Brampton for the maintenance of the existing columns and decorative fence adjacent to Credit View Road to the satisfaction of the senior manager of the Realty Services Division of the Community Services Department.
Thank you. Just for the record, I would like to include a letter from Credit Valley Conservation Authority for both the applications B19-029, A19-218, stating no concerns, no objections. I guess back to the neighbor, staff had answered majority of your concerns, and based on this is just the first step. Obviously, in the future, whenever right now the property, what the applicant is requesting is to sever into 2 pieces. So in the future, when they wants to do anything further, for example, they can come with the plan, what they want to do with individually on those lots. That will be another procedure and process to work with the staff, and at that time, if you have any concern, you can be in touch with the city staff.
Will we get another notification then, as such, and then there's going to be another meeting like this, is there, or would I have to contact the staff myself then?
No, so the reason they are here because they needed some variances.
Okay.
Let's say in the future, if they are on the planning perspective, I think there will be a public hearing or no public meeting later at the time when, if they put an applications. The reason they are here in front of committee for 2 things. One is for the severance of the lot, and the second is for the variance. For example, in the future, if they don't need any variance or any flexibility over the bylaws, then they might not be here, right? But I guess in terms of they are going to apply for both separate dwellings in the future, the property owner will be notified?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. If the applicant were looking, or the owner were looking to submit an application for plan of subdivision, that would be subject to a statutory public meeting, in which case any landowner within 240 meters would be notified of that meeting date. And if the applicant were looking to further subdivide the property by way of consent application, they would also receive notification. The only instance in which the owner would not receive notification is if the applicant or owner were looking to proceed with a single detached dwelling, which would be subject to a custom home application. It's not a public application process. They would not receive notification. Nonetheless, the owner would still have to communicate through CVC and be able to acquire those permits, and through our departments to be able to satisfy our approval requirements as well.
But to the neighbors concerned, the signage and all other measures will be there the moment somebody will make an application.
Correct.
I think my concern at this point, if they are going to proceed with construction, is my concern about because I have friends who've constructed houses.
Can you please come forward?
Sure, I can. I probably have the podium, so I'm sorry.
So I guess my concern at this point is that when construction does begin, like, can I request a privacy screen of trees from behind where my, property is? Is that a possibility?
Sure, Mr. Denars.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I know it's difficult to see on this plan, but there is actually a line that's identified on the consent map that actually highlights where the staked top of bank was with the Conservation Authority done in 2018. That actually outlines the, I guess, maximum envelope that could be allowed. So any development, whether it's a single detached house or future plan of subdivision, would have to be beyond that line. So if I understand the resident's concern, he lives here, there is a substantial buffer greater than probably 30 meters before it reaches his rear property line. So I think that should give him some comfort that the closest a dwelling or dwellings could come to his rear property line is anything at this line plus 10 meters.
Okay. Well,
Okay, yeah. So 10 meter is another setback from,
the stake top of line.
yeah.
so see, I didn't understand that. I don't understand. So that's pretty good because, like I said, if you drive down to the new subdivision they built on Churchill, those houses literally back onto
Yeah.
the older houses property. So if you were to sit outside, I don't want to be looking.
And just to be on a practical note, if someone is investing and building new custom home,
Absolutely.
obviously they don't want to put really close to,
No,
right?
and I completely understand. It's
Yeah.
just like I said, what I've seen is it almost seems like an overcrowding of the
Yeah,
area
yeah.
happening, and that was my concern. But if
Given
there's,
the fact that, it's a large lot, the shape is irregular, and
it is,
and even now or in the future, someone wants to develop, obviously, when they come with their plans and their applications, city has specific guidelines for specific neighborhoods, and they want to see while they're assessing their request for any changes or even for the new construction, and especially with the customs,
yeah,
where they have more leverage to play, and they like to put everyone together with the character of the entire neighborhood while they were saying yes to these applications. So I can see, and I feel there's a good representation this property owner has retained, and Mr. Denars that's why he explained. Obviously, and the city will be closely monitored in the future, and there will be signage, and if it requires under the Planning Act, you will be notified.
perfect.
But you're more than welcome to exchange the card and write it down. And if you're concerned, you will be notified today's decision in the mail as well.
Okay, excellent, sir. And again, why was also one thing, because I know that the owner owns that additional piece of land just cornering onto Churchill and Walnut Road. So I was, thinking if in the future that gets severed, but I think the fact that
That is an entirely separate
I
application that would be, and
Okay.
will not be dealing as we're dealing today. Obviously, they have to go through that
Okay.
procedure.
perfect.
It's completely separate application, even
Okay.
though it's owned by the same owner, but that doesn't mean
Okay, perfect.
at that time staff will have all other inquiries and another
The
question.
same process.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Denars, I guess we have good discussions, Are you okay with the amended staff recommendations?
Through the chair, yes, I am. I find the added condition acceptable.
Okay, so if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support staff's amended recommendation by Mr. Powers, seconded by Ms. Duffler. All in favor? This is approved.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. And these were the both applications. I just want to confirm, yeah.
Calling application A19-197, Pavandeep Kaur Dillon. The property is located at 4 Pika Trail.
Good morning. My name is Ravinder Singh. I'm the authorized agent for my client Pavandeep Kaur Dillon at 4 Pika Trail.
Sure, go ahead. Anything you wishes to add beside your application? You want to add something?
No, I don't like to add anything.
Okay. Committee members, any question, comment, concern regarding this application at this time? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Sir, please come forward. If you can please step aside. Your name and address for the
Good morning,
record.
everyone. Good morning, member. My name is Dan Paul Wright, a resident at 22 Stonecrest Drive, neighboring adjacent to this property.
If you can please spell your name slowly, sir.
DHANPAULRAI,
Okay, and you are from 22
Stonecrest.
Stonecrest. Are you the next door neighbor?
Yes, sir. Correct.
You're the corner property owner.
That's right.
Okay. Go ahead with your concerns, please.
My only concern here is I see in the letter sent in stated fence. I would like some more clarification of what does that mean, and I'm opposed if that means of removing the fence, because that fence was there when I bought that property. And the real estate lawyer told me that fence is in my line.
Sorry?
It was built by the builder.
Okay,
The fence is in my property line. So if this is the case of removing that fence, I'm against that. I'm opposing that.
Okay. I guess staff will answer when the staff turns after you. When the staff turns, will come to speak. However, I was there, and that fence is obviously higher than the normal fences. But one thing I just want to clear, even though if you purchase something and that was by the previous owner, that doesn't mean that that is right. Regardless if you have construct or the previous owner is responsible for any construction, not just this fence. If it's not under compliance, the city has authority to bring in the compliance, and that's why we are here listening your concerns. But I understand what you just said, that you're opposed to removal of the fence if that is the recommendation. Am I correct, sir?
Yes.
Okay, so if you can please have a seat here close by. If you want to add something after, once the staff has opportunity to speak, you can always come back. Thank you. Anybody else for this application from the neighborhood? Seeing none, staff, could you please bring your comments, recommendations?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff are of the opinion that with the exception of variance 4 related to this front yard fence, 7 feet high, that the other variances do meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. We're recommending that the application is supportable in part, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, that variance 4 to permit the fence in the front yard with a height of 2.16 meters or 7 feet be refused. Number 2, that the owner obtain a building permit for the rear yard roof structure and the side yard deck structure, the stairs and the landing, within 60 days of the final date of the decision of the committee. Number 3, that the height of the existing open roofed porch in the rear yard shall not exceed the height of the main level of the dwelling. Number 4, that drainage from the open roof structure and the accessory structure be directed onto the subject property and drainage on adjacent properties not be adversely impacted. And finally, number 5, that failure to comply with and maintain any condition of the committee will render the approved variances null and void. With regard to what's raised by Mr. Ray, this is likewise what the owner's agent discussed with our city's zoning examiner. There does seem to be some dispute about whose property the fence is on. The survey seems to indicate that the property or the fence is on this property. However, we have not put any enforcement action into our recommended conditions, understanding the situation and that there may be some things to be worked out about who is actually the owner of that fence.
Okay, so right at this point, we don't know whose property.
The survey certainly indicates that it's on this property, the subject property at 4 Pica Trail. However, both the owner of this property and Mr. Lai, who's just provided testimony to the committee, it's owned by the other property owner, the adjacent landowner.
So the question
Either way,
is when,
there's the support for it from planning staff is not there.
when this fence originally constructed, who paid for this fence? Is your client or the neighbor or the previous neighbor at the property owner from the corner, or both the neighbors paid jointly?
So my client did not pay for this fence.
Well, to me, this fence really look awkward. I do not support this fence. That's not, and just back to the staff, is this fence where it is there some height restrictions, or because oftentimes we have seen, and maybe Ms. Corzola will be the right person to talk, we have seen oftentimes some of those chain fence, not this style of the fence between the property, right? So what are the guidelines for that?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. I can confirm that the zoning bylaw only regulates the height of the fence, and fencing in the front yard, which this fence is in the front yard of both properties in this instance, would be limited to 1 meter in height, 33 inches. So that is the only guideline. It certainly can be a board fence, and many board fences are constructed in the front yard, but the limitation is on height, and really it's to ensure visibility. Obviously, the fence also cannot extend onto the municipal boulevard. While we don't have confirmation that it does extend onto the municipal boulevard in this case, it does appear to encroach into the city's lands as well. Recognizing that there is a dispute, as Ms. Jenkins had indicated, as to who owns the fence. The zoning plans examiner took the survey, measured the distance between the house and the fence, and it certainly appears to be on the lands owned by 4 Pica Trail. But recognizing again that both owners are ultimately responsible for a property boundary fence, there has been no condition imposed in here should you choose to refuse the variance that would require the ultimate removal of that fence anytime soon, and there's certainly no enforcement action to require removal of the fence at this time.
As we have seen normally, for the betterment, for the look, the fence not more than 1 meter, which is approximately 3 feet. And oftentimes we have seen nice looking the metal fencing where, which you're enhancing the value of the property and the beauty according to the neighborhood. This is something really look awkward. In terms of if the property owners, obviously it's going to be decided, or the city will notify who really responsible and whose land that belongs to where the fence is constructed. Or in the event if both the neighbors have jointly need to modify the fence, they have to do it. But what I can suggest, if both the property owners are not sure about it, and this is something they feel that the previous owner has done, whether that's a 4 Pica Trail people or the gentleman who just came forward from Stonecrest, if you have purchased both of these properties recently, the options you have when you purchase the home, your lawyer register the title under your name, you get title insurance as well. If that is something you're concerned about, you should contact the lawyer who closed your properties at that time, because you do have title insurance. And if you have some concerns regarding the property and the boundary and stuff, you can always go through that route, and you have the title insurance to protect any of these things. City's job is to bring the property under compliance, and we are here, this board is here to look that process where we possibly see that, you know, every party come to some sort of agreement, or if we can do something for them. At this point, I am fully supportive of staff recommendation, and I would like to go with the staff recommendation, and I'm in support of bringing this fence to order to comply, because to me the look, I'm not really impressed with the look, to be honest with you, the way the fence is constructed. I understand the space is less between both the properties. Maybe that's why somebody, if not both of you, the previous owner or both the owners decided to construct this fence. But I can see that might be the hard time, like especially the winter weather, like we just had the storm, and we might get another one over the weekend. I can see it's really hard to, especially when you're parking and using the driveway, and when you see this big structure of the fence, it's not easy, and it's not even safer to get out of your vehicle and to park your vehicle there. So just quickly back to the concerned neighbor. Sir, you understand staff recommendations, and this is where the committee is willing to go ahead. Anything else you want to add? You will be notified in the future. If you have any question, you can always be in touch with the city and exchange your contact information. Can you please come forward?
Exactly is the issue of the fence right now. Why is the fence is an issue now to remove after so many years, having other neighbors moved from that property? The property was sold.
Mm-hmm. The fence is the height.
The fence between the fence is sitting there. I do not have a side entrance. I do not have a rental basement. And between that fence and the two houses, it's just about 2 feet. And I don't see if that fence is removed. That means my neighbor is going to dump his snow on my lawn now, or open his door over my lawn, because that's where the fence is, right in the center line. So I don't see removing that fence, what would we accomplish here?
No, the guidelines are, you can have the fence up to 1 meter of the height. Your height is over and beyond what the guidelines are, what the bylaws are. You don't have to remove the fence completely. You just need to bring in order for the height.
The fence is in stages. It's about 4.
We have seen.
Up.
I have the pictures.
Goes with the pattern. It's professionally built. I didn't build it. The height. I know nothing about the height of the fence. The fence was built with the property.
With due respect, if you are referring professionalism in terms of it's a strong, yes, it is.
It is.
But it is not professionally because whoever has done, and oftentimes homeowner are not aware of these restrictions and stuff, but the people who work in the fencing industry or whoever the professional by the previous owner hired, they should have known better at that time to that owner, if not you, as you mentioned. But to me, if I see here, all I can see these long posts is going up. We can see here better. So for the front yard, the height restrictions are different than your backyard. So that is the issue. You can keep your fence, but obviously you have to bring under the compliance, under the bylaws, because right now the height is an issue here.
And why is that an issue?
Because you're not meeting the bylaws.
No, but like I'm saying, after so many years, the city have not realized that. After so many years, I'm sure the city aware of that fence a long time ago.
Well, the city, Ms. Corzola, please.
If I may just through you,
Sure.
Mr. Chair, explain the process. So no, the city may not be aware of what people construct on their property. In the absence of a complaint about the fence or an application for a variance, such as the one that's been made at 4 Pica Trail, the city has no reason to visit that property unless there's an issue to be addressed. In this case, because the application was made, and the application, quite frankly, was only for the reduction, a small reduction in the size of a parking space. But upon investigating and reviewing the property for compliance on that variance application, the city is obligated then to make note of all of the other items that also would be in non-compliance with the zoning bylaw. So in visiting the property for the variance that was requested, a number of other variances, including for the porch in the backyard, certainly for the fence height in the front yard, all of those variances were identified at the time city staff visited this property for the sole purpose of responding to the application for a variance. So I can confirm, and as I did before, there are no orders to comply on this property, either for the fence or any of the other items. And likewise, there are no conditions in this decision that would require the removal of that fence within a certain time frame. I can confirm that it does not comply with the zoning bylaw, and if somebody did complain about it now, even several years after, and admittedly it's, it does appear on our air photos for, the last 10, 15 years, but if somebody did complain about it now, the city would be obligated to issue an order to comply to both of those property owners, not to remove the fence, but to reduce the height to a maximum height of 1 meter in the front yard only.
So 1 meter is approximately roughly around 3 feet, right? So the way it looks, if you see there are like 4 sections of this fence. The last one, which is close to the boulevard or to the road, that will be the more close to 3 feet, even though that's higher than 3 feet. You understand what the staff has said, and those are the guidelines we are looking for it. But I do understand, and I am fully sympathize with your concerns, or I would say frustration that why it's coming after so many years. The reason it's here because the person whoever construct at that time, they choose not to check with the city that what are the guidelines. And whether that's the property owner at that time, whether you or your next door neighbor at that time.
No, the builder.
Sorry?
It was the builder. That's what my lawyer told me. That was built by the builder.
I don't believe that, sir, because if a builder is building any fence, first of all, builder only build the fence to the corner property facing onto the street, not between the neighbors. And if anything builder does, their applications comes to the city. If anything they are going over and beyond these bylaws, this committee have seen multiple applications by the builders. Without permission, they cannot do it.
Of course. Exactly.
Right?
Okay.
So whoever has done it at that time, choose not to follow the proper procedure. And unfortunately, that's why you're here. But I genuinely sympathize with your concerns and your frustration. But this is something to avoid anything for the future. Once both the property owners comply with this, I mean, like bring it to the height restriction not more than 1 meter, I think you are satisfying everything, and no one can challenge in the future, at least for this matter.
So if I may ask, who is the complaint? Who complained about the fence?
No one complained, sir. No one complained.
So whose expense would this be, seeing that I did not build a fence, my neighbor did not build a fence, and me and my neighbor, we are not enemies. Why is the fence, the height is an issue? Why the fence is in this picture right now?
Well, before I answer, Mr. Power wishes to say something.
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, it appears that the fence is on Pika Drive, so it would be the responsibility of Pika Drive.
Well, my real estate lawyer, and I pay a fee for that, they say in future, if there's a dispute, this is what you do because it's here in your deed. This fence is in the line and it's your fence. So we will have to sort this out.
There's a dispute of the property line, which is not at this point.
What my 2 cents in this, I'm not here to decide who's going to pay, first of all, but a suggestion, and don't quote me on it that I said something and you are responsible or your neighbor is responsible. It's the fence between 2 property, so both the property owner jointly responsible for it. And to bring in compliance, I don't see somebody going to charge you thousands of dollars. I think it's just very small fence which need to be bring in order. It should not be very much. That I can say for sure because I have seen the work.
So if we were to cut this fence down to 3 feet, what difference would it make between me and my neighbor or the public?
You will be complying with the bylaw.
I did not break the bylaws. I did not put the fence.
It's on your property.
It's on my property.
Yeah.
Now you're saying it's on my property. Before you're saying it's on Pickett's.
Let me respectfully tell you, sir. You can make this argument for 2 hours long.
No, I'm not arguing.
That's not going to change my
I am not
position and this
arguing,
committee's
sir.
position, right? So it's not you build the fence. You are saying you did not build the fence. Your neighbor are saying they didn't build
That's
the fence. Some aliens came and built the fence then?
I do not know. I bought the property with the fence, and so is my neighbor.
So again, respectfully, what I understand is we are not here to investigate who built the fence. This report is in front of us, and we are making the judgment accordingly. We have not made yet. So this is what, after the discussions, we are going to decide who is going to, what is going to happen with these staff recommendations. But somebody has done it. It's in front of us, and staff has an obligation to follow and comply. And it's not that either way, any of these changes need to be made overnight. There is time. We understand there's a winter month, so obviously there will be time for any modification required.
Well, like I said, me and my neighbor do not have a problem. We are neighbors. We are okay.
That's good to know.
Why is the fence the height, or whether it's the fence alone? Why is it an issue? That's my question. I need an
Again,
answer.
sir, I said 20 minutes back, the issue is the height. Both the neighbors, I don't know who's responsible for it, appear to me in the middle of the property. If me and you would not be talking here if this fence's height is not more than 1 meter. You are allowed, legally you're allowed to have a fence in the front yard for 1 meter. That's the maximum height anybody can go, whether that's me for my property or my committee members or whether the staff here for their properties. I don't know, I'm not sure about how Mississauga or other municipality has the bylaws, but they are somewhat at the same. 1 meter for the front. Municipality to municipality, there could be little difference, but oftentimes 99.9% it's the same.
Because a few weeks back, I can remember clearly my neighbor did said to me, and he was upset, And I was upset. He said, the guy came and said, I have to remove the fence. I said, what fence? He said, this fence. I said, why? He said, because my basement rented and I built a shed in the backyard. I don't care if you rent your basement. I don't care if you build a shed in the backyard. And he said because he wants parking space. So obviously, my neighbor wants the fence to remove or cut down. The city just drive by and say this fence is too high overnight.
It's not overnight because this was never by the permission at the beginning. And let me add something more. At this point, there's no complaint on this, as staff member just indicated. Your neighbor apply for something, some other variances. When the city go and inspect, at that time they find this is not by under the bylaw. Am I correct, Ms. Corzola? That's what exactly happened. So it's not that you initiated something or somebody else complained. It's the owner, property owner for 4 Pica Trail, your next door neighbor, requested city to do some work for their basements and in the backyard, if I'm correct. And that's where the city officials identified that this fence is not according to the code. There could be some other things if they are not under the code, for example, their driveway or something. But at this point, what we are addressing is all those concerns. I unfortunately cannot say who is responsible to pay, but if, let's say, I am the property owner for 4 Pica Trail, and if any of my action, now because I got involved with the city, I would be voluntarily come forward and look after the expenses. Again, don't quote me on it. I'm saying if I'm the owner of the property, that's what I would do. I'm not saying as a committee member here or the chair, but I'm just speaking on myself. If I'm the property owner where I live, if any of my action, if I'm trying to do something with my property, I should not be saying it, but now you made me say it because we are going back and forth in the discussion, and I cannot continue because I have another agenda to work on. So if you have anything new to add or you're concerned, please, you have the opportunity now. Otherwise, please have your seat and we'll proceed with the meeting.
With all due respect, all I can say, if me and my neighbor says the height doesn't matter to him, it doesn't matter to me, regardless of what the city says, we are not going to cut it down. Is that okay?
Then city will do their course and you will be served with the further notices or whoever is responsible. And they have the other legal obligations, which includes the court procedure as well.
All of that I don't know anything about. Like I said, I bought this property and my neighbor bought his property. The fence was sitting there. My lawyer says this fence is yours. This is what you're going to pay for. You're paying a fee.
So what my suggestion is, if that is so you have 2 choices. Within 20 days after this decision, you can apply to the next level, which is Elpac or OMB. Anybody can appeal our decision made here today. You have that option. If you decide not to cut your fence or bring in the compliance, you will further receive a notice, or the property owners will receive the notice from the city. You can take that notice to your lawyer at that time, or you can have your lawyer in touch with the city or city solicitor now, so they can further inquire and city solicitor can respond accordingly. These are your options, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your explanation.
Okay, thank you so much for coming forward. Sir, back to you. Do you understand and accept all these recommendations?
Yes.
Okay, if no further business, looking for a motion to proceed, but I guess just want to comment, since you understand these terms better, that's what my understanding is, as you're representing one of the property owner. So I'm sure you can advise them accordingly, even after this hearing, and you can, based on your judgment, you can guide them, because oftentimes property owners, and I fully sympathize with them, they don't really understand. And it's not that they have done intentionally something wrong. It's not that they are trying to achieve something by doing wrong. It's just being layman. If I'm not introduced to some of these things, how would I know that this is a law, sometimes the driveway or the deck? But you are the professional, I guess you can guide them properly.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring one more point here was, my client only wanted to legalize the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to legalize the basement, their main concern was the parking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we came up with. Our variance was to get more parking space. Sorry, the amount of parking which is available to be accepted for legalizing the basement. In order to do that, then all these things came up, like, for example, the shed in the backyard, the roof and the deck on the side of the property, which does not comply with the bylaws.
Yeah.
So all those came up along with this application. So the fence also was part of that.
Yeah. No, that's what we learned through the discussion, and I guess one thing is really good to know that both the neighbors get along well, and they multiple times they said, so I'm sure there will be some mutual understanding.
So only our concern would be just to do not have the misunderstanding between them, that who will be responsible to bring this fence into.
Sir, may I say
bylaw.
respectfully, you're not talking about big, huge building who's responsible. You want me to come and cut the fence for you? That's what you want?
No, my
Then
client is ready
we're
to do
talking for
that.
half an hour for this
No,
3 feet of fence.
no, my concern is my client is ready to do that on their own.
Then the problem is solved.
But the problem is the neighbor doesn't want them to touch it because they say that it is their property, they cannot touch this. So that is what we need the clarification.
Well, both the property owners can be in touch with the city, and they will be notified in their written correspondence. And whoever received the notice to cut it down, or if both, that's what will be the final answer.
Yes.
And you can advise them this. They can seek their independent legal advice from their solicitors, from their lawyers, whose responsibility is. I'm sure they have the survey. They can bring a professional, as you are one of the professionals, and they can seek their own legal independence, independent opinions. Okay?
Yep, thank you so much.
If no further discussion or enough of discussion, we're looking forward to motion to proceed, please.
Motion to proceed with staff's recommendations.
Motion to proceed with staff recommendation by Mr. Koch, seconded by Mr. Power. All in favor? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Calling application A19-215, Eddie Fung and Candida Gonzaden. The property is located at 7 La France Road.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the committee.
Good morning.
My name is Eddie Fong. I live at 7 La France Road, and I am the homeowner and the applicant for this minor variance. Now, according to the public notice, there's two variances here. The first one's about the lot coverage, more than 30%, and the second one's about my driveway width. So I understand the first variance is no longer an issue because the roof structure over my basement walkout is an open structure. So I have nothing to add there. But the driveway width, the one about the driveway width, now, I just want to add that, okay, it was like that when I bought the property, first of all. Now, the driveway is, it's a regular sized driveway with the added walkway of 5 feet that leads from the front porch down towards the sidewalk. And it was constructed that way, constructed with the same paving stones as the driveway, so it looks like it's part of the driveway. And I have to admit, we have more than 2 cars, so we take advantage and park part of the car on the walkway so we can squeeze a couple more cars onto the driveway, so it makes it convenient for family members backing in and out when they need to. So The other thing is that the driveway portion down by the property line and the sidewalk is, within the required area. So that's all I have to add.
Sure, no problem, sir. Thank you for your submissions. Committee members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the variance number 1 is supportable, subject to the following conditions. The extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. The owner shall obtain a building permit within 60 days of the decision of the approval. The below-grade entrance shall not be used for an unregistered second dwelling unit. And the failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of a committee shall render the approval null and void. Variance number 2 to permit the driveway width of 8.84 meters be refused.
So, sir, for your driveway, I know that's your concern is.
Yes.
In the event the variance 2 is refused, for example, that doesn't mean that you have to completely remove all the interlocking or whatever the means are there. You can work with the staff by adding some permanent barriers, some lamp post, or some permanent structure for landscaping by putting something. I was there yesterday evening at your property and I saw one car was parked in that direction, even though you had good enough space. I could not see the material for 2 reasons. It was cold and your driveway was covered with the snow. So having said that, what you need to do is work with the staff. It's not that you cannot have your walkway, obviously you can have, but you just need to create some permanent barriers. And they can obviously work with you and they can address your concerns.
Yeah. Okay, sure, I can do that. And,
Because to be honest with you, they are really good and oftentimes they are lenient. 5 feet is too much off walkway. That's not something regular we see. If this is 2 feet or something, we could have looked other way, or staff had looked at that time. But having said that, right now these are the staff recommendations. And my question is, if you don't want to add anything, or if you want to add, you can obviously do. Do you understand and accept these recommendations as presented by the staff?
yes, I just want to find out too, if is it permissible just if I show that separation between the pathway and the driveway with like a strip of sod or something like that in between? Like, does it have to be like a barrier, like a
I'll have
wall?
Ms. Corzola from the zoning department to answer your question. Ms. Corzola.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Again, this is another circumstance where the driveway got picked up as part of the variance application that was actually being requested for the lot coverage. There is no order to comply at this point to reduce the driveway width, and the driveway width reduction is not imposed as a condition in your approval today. If the owner chooses to bring it into compliance with the bylaw, a strip of sod would not be sufficient because that can be easily straddled by a vehicle. So the idea would be to make the area incapable of being parked upon by a vehicle, which is really the deciding factor. If he wants to add sod, I would recommend adding it on the outside and actually reducing the width of the driveway. This is a lot that gets a 24-foot wide driveway, and this is a 29-foot wide driveway. So there are options, as you said. Adding permanent physical barriers is another one. Perhaps that would be something, like a garden bench, some seating, light posts, any kind of landscape feature that might, appeal to the homeowner that would prevent a vehicle from parking on that excess width.
So you understand?
I understand.
Are you in agreement?
I agree.
Okay. If no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion by Mr. Power to support staff recommendations, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-216, Knowns Holdings, Inc. The property is located at 70 Devon Road.
Good morning. My name is Samora Redu, and I'm the authorized agent for this application. The property is located at 70 Devon Road, unit number 10. And this application is asking the committee if they can permit a personal service shop, a barber, and a salon, whereas the bylaw does not permit for this location. This business has been there for about 15 years. And for that time, there hasn't been any issues or any complaints. There are no offices in this building at all, and the parking, they have ample amount of space of parking. So for these reasons, we're requesting that the committee will allow this business to continue.
Okay, sure. Members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, would you please weigh in your comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff reviewed the application against the four tests as outlined in the Planning Act and recommending approval subject to two conditions. Condition 1, that the owner obtain a building permit for change of use within 60 days of the date of the decision of the committee. And Condition 2, that failure to comply with the condition of the committee will render the approval null and void.
So you understand and accept these conditions?
Correct, I understand.
Committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed with staff recommendation by Mr. Koch, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Calling application A19-217, Anil and Rita Agarwal. The property is located at 10 Hedgedale Road.
Good morning, members of committee, staff, public. My name is Claudio Bruto. We're the agent for the owners of this particular development. I have reviewed the staff report and the recommendations, and I am concurring that they are appropriate and would seek your indulgence to approve those recommendations. I have a brief presentation to illustrate the site,
Sure.
the look of the building, just to complete the whole, I guess, story of this particular application. So our client currently runs an operation on Steeles Avenue. He rents there, and they're looking to move that operation, keep it in Brampton, obviously, on this particular piece of property that they purchased on Hedgedale Road. You probably visited the site. It's on Tompkin, just south of Steeles Avenue. So this is a property that was part of a draft plan of subdivision. They acquired it. It's the second last property of the internal portion of this subdivision. And it is you drive through there, it is a really nice employment area. So we've worked very carefully with your planner, Rob Nick Fortune, and we are in the process of well along on a site plan approval. That's why we're here today, because the site plan approval is well advanced, and we're hoping that we should be able to complete that very, very shortly. So that's the property. Here's a close-up look at the property. As you can see, that's the property on Hedgedale Road. There's existing employment uses along Hedgedale Road. There's a Coca-Cola fabrication or bottling plant in the area. This is the other property that is vacant. So it is a really, really nice property, and it suits our clients' needs pretty much to a T. There were some variances that we requested, and through the work of your staff, we've been able to come to the conclusions that have been arrived at. There's a copy of the site plan, and you can see a lot of green space. It's a unique type of operation where they have very little retail. They do bring in materials for plumbing and electrical, for distribution. They have some wholesale and a little showroom where people can come and look at the products and then make their acquisitions accordingly. But it's not a full-blown retail operation.
It's only for the trade-related people. They come and they pick their material and stuff.
Or they would have pre-ordered online, come and pick up their material. They'll meet whoever is going to serve their needs to pick up and move. So it's
this kind of neighborhood is very ideal for those kind of things.
Absolutely, but we also recognize that the building needs to be have a good look. So floor plan has been well established.
We have in our package, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just a bit of an illustration, a rendering.
Nice.
So as you can see, it's a really nice building for the area, and we think it'll be a suitable fit. There's another look at it right there. So with that being said, I have reviewed the staff report, and from my perspective as a professional planner of over 35 years, I believe that the application, the variances, do meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act that allow you the opportunity to accept and adopt the variances. And I would again humbly ask that you adopt the staff report. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have that might arise from the floor as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, Mr. Nicky Fortune, if you can please go ahead with the staff recommendations.
Okay, yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. As the applicant had noted that this property was subdivided by the surrounding plan of subdivision was about 31 years ago. At that time, it is a corner lot, and at that time, a 10 by 10 site triangle was taken on the subdivision, given that it is a corner lot for sightline purposes. Through the processing of this site plan application that we've been working with the applicant over the past year and a bit, it was determined that maybe a 15 by 15 meter site triangle would be needed. And more recently, as a result of this minor variance application, the minds can change of transportation. They can revert back to the 10 by 10, which means that one of the variances being requested by the applicant of a 0 meter setback to the site triangle is really not needed, and now it's been reduced now to maybe about 3.5 meters. So aside from all the variances requested, that's the only one that's really changed as a result of that last bit of information. And staff believe that the requested variances, all 6 of them, meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act, and staff are recommending approval subject to the following 6 conditions, that being 1, that the extent of variances 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. Second, that the extent of variance 4 pertaining to the exterior side yard setback to a daylight triangle be revised and limited to a minimum setback of 3.5 meters. Third, that the accessory retail use not be established until such time as the site plan has been approved and all related on-site improvements are implemented to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. Fourth, that the owner finalize site plan approval under site plan file SP 19089, execute a site plan agreement, and post any required financial securities and insurance to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services within 270 days of the date of the committee decision or as extended at the discretion of the Director of Development Services. Fifth, that the requirement for a parking for any combination of uses permitted in the M32677 zone be calculated at the applicable parking rate in accordance with the zoning bylaw and shall not exceed 28 parking spaces. And last, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Sir, do you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. If no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support staff recommendation by Ms. Doffler, seconded by Mr. Pope. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank your staff for their hard work.
And best wishes to you and your clients for the beautiful building and the structure.
We hope that construction will start in the spring, and they'll be in there in the spring of next year.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Calling application A19-219, Codip and Gurprit Saran. The property is located at 13 Grafton Crescent.
Good morning,
Morning.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, city staff. My name is Gabriel Frasson, Moretto Design. I'm the agent for the applicant. And what we're requesting is two variances for this said property. It's a custom home in an estate lot. And we're asking for a height a variance of from 10.6 meters, which is allowed, to 12.8. And also a variance for the garage door height from an allowed 2.4 meters to 2.86. I've read the staff report and have been in touch with the planning department, which we're in the process of getting our site plan approval, which we will finalize pending on our outcome today.
Sure.
So if you have any questions, those are the only variances that I have.
Sure. Thank you. Can members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
The applicant finalize site plan approval, execute a site plan agreement, and post any required securities to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services. Number two, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And number three, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Okay, so do you understand and accept these?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to support staff recommendation by Mr. Powers, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? Approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Calling application A19-220, P. Judge Investments and Malik Investments. The property is located at 199 Advance Boulevard.
Good morning. I'm the applicant Nala Ali for this minor variance requesting. The proposed work is a change of use from cell phone repair, Group D, to an escape room, which is a recreation center of A2. The site plan is, the building is 199, it's a corner building. The proposed work is in unit number 1. The building right now has a mixed use of Group D offices, like a financial office, lawyer office. There is other retail for selling kitchen cabinets. And there is a open buffet restaurant of Brab, Indian food. So there is a lot of mix, and we are asking here if kindly get approved to change of use from Group D to A2, escape room.
Okay. Members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Mr. Chair, staff are supportive of this application, subject to the following conditions being imposed. One, the owner obtained a permit for a change of use prior to occupancy of the building. Two, the extent of the variance be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. Three, the permitted uses as a place of commercial recreation be limited to an escape room. 4, the floor area of the place of commercial recreation use be limited to 400 square meters. And 5, the failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Thank you. Ma'am, you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed. Staff's recommendations.
By Mr. Cope, seconded by Mr. Power. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Calling application A19-221, 2184-107 Ontario Inc., formerly 1458-5873 Ontario Limited. The property is located at 11 Automatic Road.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and staff is here today. My name is Mike Pettigrew. I work at the Biglieri Group, and we are the agents on behalf of the owners of 11 Automatic Road. So we have read the staff report, and it is very comprehensive, and we are in support of the recommendations and the conditions that are there. We've been working with Daniel and the team through the site plan process, and we've now got to pretty much the end of that, and we are looking for these variances that have been identified.
Thank you. Committee members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none. Staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thanks, and through the chair, staff are in support of application A19-221, subject to the following conditions being imposed. One, that the owner finalize site plan approval under City File SP 18098.000, execute a site plan agreement, and post any required financial securities and insurance to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services within 180 days of the date of the committee's decision or within an extended period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services. Two, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And three, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void.
Sir, you understand and accept these conditions?
I do.
Committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed.
Motion to proceed with staff's recommendations.
Motion to proceed with staff recommendation by Mr. Cope, seconded by Ms. Doppler. All in favor? This is approved.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Calling application A19-145, 2197-008 Ontario Inc., and the property is located at 3 Edvac Drive.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of committee and the staff. My name is Carson Makula. I'm the authorized agent for this application. I'm submitting on behalf of Export Packers. We are asking for a building expansion to be completed so that the facility can assist in the expansion of the business. On October 22nd, this application was heard in the variance hearing, and the committee requested the application was deferred to allow for more time for myself and my client to work with Daniel in the planning department, and we are thankful for this opportunity. Jeff Rubenstein is the president of Export Packers. He was here at the previous hearing. He was unable to attend today because he was looking after a family member who was sick, and he apologizes for his absence. He wanted me to pass his appreciation to everyone involved in the application. The footprint of the proposed building is shown, encroaches on the existing route for transport trucks traveling between the property entrance and the loading dock, and encroaches on the loading dock area as well. This area is already quite tight, and additional asphalt area will be required to maneuver the delivery trucks appropriately. We are asking that the landscape buffer for Humber West Parkway is reduced from 12 meters to approximately 6 meters, as it is necessary for delivery trucks to access the docks after the addition is built. We negotiated and discussed with the planning department and have increased the landscape buffer from 4 meters in our initial proposal to now 6 meters. We've increased the landscape to maximize the visual barrier between Humber West Parkway and the facility. And we've proposed a 1.2 meter berm, which the trees will be planted atop.
Well, thank you for your submission. This is a perfect example when everyone try their best to work together, I guess, and it's good to see the businesses there for a good number of years.
Yeah.
And that's what we always try whether at the city level, the staff or ourselves, even the people here before us or somebody might be after us, but at the end of the day for the greater good when everyone is trying their best. So I recall when we grant the deferral, and this is one of that example when you give the opportunity to everyone to work together so we can have some good outcome for everyone.
We appreciate it as well.
Right. Thank you. Committee members, any question, comment, concern? At this point, seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments?
Thanks, and through the chair. So staff are in support of the application, subject to the following conditions being imposed. One, that an upscale landscaping treatment be provided within the remaining landscape buffer along Humber West Parkway, which shall be confirmed through site plan approval of City File SP 18-034.001 to the satisfaction of the manager of open space development. Two, that the owner finalize site plan approval under that same city file, execute a site plan agreement, and post any required financial securities insurance to satisfaction of the Director of Development Services within 180 days of the date of the committee's decision, within an extended period of time as approved by the Director of Development Services. 3, that the parking stalls of reduced depth be signed for small car parking only. 4, that the extent of the variances be limited to that shown on the sketch attached to the public notice. And 5, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void. And just as one quick point about the first comment, or the first condition, that is, of course, related to that landscape buffer, which was the crux of the issue at the last time. Last time it was deferred. So through the work that we've done, the buffer has been increased to a proposed 6.215 at its narrowest and 7.035 meters at its widest part before the bulb moves out. And through that process, we have been working through various designs of the buffer with berming, as the applicant alluded to, and so that condition is just recommended so that we can be satisfied that we can secure that landscape as we have discussed through the rest of the site plan application process.
That's good. I guess that will satisfy the turning of the truck and the trailer, because that was one of the issue at that time. So I'm glad the staff is satisfied and for doing commendable job, and you and the rest of the staff member, which is really good to see. And previously at that time there was some fencing backing onto the Humber West, not exactly at this property, but I think 1 or 2 properties down to the north. So I guess at that time the owner were willing to even pay for it at that time, but I guess that was not necessary since we already have the good enough landscaping and the trees and stuff there.
Yeah, that's right. So through the chair, at the past meeting, we did discuss the possibility of extending the fence or perhaps building a more ornamental fence along this side. Through that discussion with the manager of open space development, it was decided that using berming and landscaping methods would probably be preferable to get the dense tree cover that we were looking for. So that's why we have kind of gone with that. But the condition does leave it relatively open-ended that if that were to come up and is seen as a preferable option, an ornamental fence could certainly be considered as part of the landscaping. So we haven't kind of eliminated that as a possibility.
Good to know. So do you understand and accept these conditions?
Yes, we do, and we will continue to work with the planning department during the site plan approval process.
Good to know. Committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. The motion to support staff recommendation by Mr. Power, seconded by Ms. Duffler. All in favor? This is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Calling application A19-193, Shalis Kumar Patel. The property is located at 68 Seahorse Avenue.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sailesh Kumar Patel from 68 Seahorse Avenue.
Good morning, thank you.
I'm Amy Pitzel, same address. I'm just his daughter, and his English is a bit iffy, so I hope it's okay if I can speak on his behalf. Sorry, with the concern with the variations, but I just wanted to add that the second variation with regards to the gross floor area, that we're willing to move the proposed home occupation into a different area so that it's under 15 square meters.
Okay, board members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments? Ms. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff are of the opinion that these variances do not meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. We are recommending that the application is not supportable. There is an issue with the official plan policies which do not permit home occupations within semi-detached dwellings with the exception of a home office. We're concerned that it does not, or the variances do not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, are not desirable for the neighborhood in terms of maintaining the residential character of the area, and are not minor in nature. We're recommending that the application be refused.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jenkins. This is a semi-detached dwelling, and it was 2 usage previously when we grant the deferral. So now, given the fact that the tutoring variance, occupation variance, which they were originally requesting, is no longer in this new amended application. Now the alteration, clothing and textile alteration, will be the sole use. Is that any of the semi-detached property? Is that the same it stands for? Maybe Ms. Corzola can answer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I can certainly confirm that the only home occupation that would be permitted in a semi-detached or any townhouse or apartment dwelling would be a home office. So anything other than a home office, including tailoring, is not a permitted home occupation in a semi-detached dwelling.
Just to follow up on that question, to that comment, the question is, previously, maybe I'm mistaken, but we did allow, with the positive recommendations to some of the tutoring, for example, the tuition, and I believe they were not the detached dwellings. Is that something based on case-to-case basis, or a few months back I recall something from the East Brampton side, near Fogel and Gore Road area. I recall there was one, somebody made an application in some of those new townhomes, and I believe they are not the one is live-work unit style, if I'm correct.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I can't recall. I know that certainly over the years that I've been here, the committee has been asked to approve and sort of varying styles of home occupation within the semi-detached dwellings. I know that occasionally people will operate a hair salon in the semi-detached dwelling. Certainly the commercial schools that we would normally see are probably more impactful on the community, because if you have several children being dropped off and picked up, it does increase traffic. So I'm certain that that's part of what planning staff would look at on a case-by-case basis. This is now being sort of whittled down just to the tailoring and clothing textile. So that would be something that planning staff would have to comment on, whether that was taken into consideration, but I suspect it was in this case based on this neighborhood and availability of parking. We are also dealing with a parking variance. This property only is able to provide the 2 parking spaces, whereas an additional parking space would also be required to permit the home occupation, regardless of whether this was a semi-detached dwelling.
I completely understand, and I agree with staff on that note. As my personal observation for this application, and I see the reasons and I understand the logic by not supporting this application. When they previously came, they were asking for, I guess, too much or more than one use. Since then, they have shown that they amended their application. And I do understand that tuition or the tutoring would generate more traffic than this alteration or textile alteration or the clothing. I know they said in the arguments or during the conversation at that time that this is only for the family people within their relatives. And I know you're trying to say something at this point, but I do not agree with you, right? Before even you say that, that's going to be, that some of your family member is just going to alter or fix the clothing for your relatives or family friends. Who has the time in Canada or anywhere else in the world to do just for the family and friends, and you need the variance. But given the fact that on a reality base, if I just comment in, there are many people, they are working from their home and they are either, that is occupation, whether that's a townhome, semi-detached or detached. If it's too much traffic, obviously, as it was presented at the last time, so majority of the committee shows the indication that they are not in support. What my personal observation is, I just, for this variance at least, I could be lenient based on the committee members, but I do understand the traffic and the concerns, and the neighbor, one of the concerned neighbor was here in the previous meeting. If I'm saying that I'm sympathize and I understand and I'm okay with, please don't take it for granted. I'm not saying that. What I like to propose, I would like to put forward a time frame on it, not more than 2 years, in the event if, and that's my, and obviously I'm going to ask my rest of the committee members how they feel, to be okay for this variance for 2 years time period. And obviously, during this time, everything will be monitored as the failure to comply conditions I would like to add. And if everything finds, you can come back here after 2 years, and or maybe during this time in these 2 years, you can move on and you can make your. I'm not saying really to move on from the property, but you have the other options, because 2 years is good enough time for whether you want to decide on something else, or if everything goes well, if your business or anything gets busy, you might need at that time. But if you're making just the argument that you need this variance just for your family and friends, I'm sorry, I'm not going to buy that. That's not practical to me. I guess Mr. Power wants to add something. No? Okay. So staff, please comment. You think I'm advocating for too much for them, or I'm too lenient here, or I guess that's a fair compromise if I put, if I suggest a time frame.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I'll defer to Ms. Jenkins on additional conditions that we might recommend for
Sure.
committee's consideration. Certainly, I would agree that one home occupation certainly has less impact than the two.
Yeah.
And of the two that were originally proposed, this is probably the least impactful. So certainly, additional conditions may assist in ensuring that it is compatible with the remainder of the neighborhood. And I think Dana has some additional ones for your consideration.
Sure. Ms. Jenkins, if you can please help out with the conditions.
Conditions that we looked at, Mr. Chairman, were the following. That the home occupation be limited strictly to clothing and textile alteration only, as specified in the public notice. There shall be no dyeing of textiles, sale of goods, or any dry cleaning or laundry distribution. Number 2, that the home occupation activity be restricted to the 17.95 square meter room in the basement, as indicated in the applicant's submission. Number 3, that the variances be approved for a temporary period of 1 year or 2 years, as you stated. And number 4, that failures to comply with and maintain any condition of the committee will render the temporary approval null and void.
Okay. Ms. Carzola, are you satisfied with all the conditions? I would like to make it 2 years, so 1 year is, I guess, too less. The
Thank
time?
you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have seen the conditions. I have no further recommendations for your consideration.
Okay, back to the applicant. I think we have done our good work. Right now, the proposed is for 2-year basis. 2 years is good enough time for you to plan for your future, for your business or on your family note. But keep in mind, any of your neighbor can complain if they see the activities. If you still decide to proceed with your tutoring business from your property, don't think you're not being watched. I'm not really saying, I'm just saying in a good way, so you are aware that what you requested, because this variance is strictly for that use. Okay?
Yeah.
You understand and in agreement?
Yes. Can I just add a couple of things, though?
Sure, you're more than welcome.
A question, for the 2 years that you're giving us for this variance, do we have to move? Like, if we don't get any complaints and we're within these rights, can we still continue this after 2 years, or do we, like...
So after 2 years, you need to work with the staff and you need to reapply it.
Okay.
And if everything goes well at that time can be extended. If, let's say, there's a trouble or it's not, it can be refused at that time. Or if all these conditions Ms. Jenkins just stated, if you are, as a property owner, are not maintaining those conditions, it will be refused. It can be canceled in these 2 years. So it's not that today we approve something and down the road you are not fulfilling these conditions. Don't think you're good for 2 years.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a good property owner for 7 months, this is gonna stay for 7 months.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so if no further discussion, looking for a motion
Sorry.
to proceed. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Just one last thing. I know we said we're going to be moving our tutoring business out of our home and somewhere else. We were wondering if you'd consider giving us some time to do that, because it's been hard to find a place that we can afford at this point, so...
For the tutoring business?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cannot be lenient on that because last time when you were here, that was November?
Yes.
November, right?
Yes.
November the 12th, right?
Yeah.
So November, December, and now we are in January. So if 2-3 months were not enough, I cannot give more time. Sorry?
Just only 1 week.
1 week,
Exam
20
going on like on the 25. So this week is like a finish.
So it's not that, I cannot comment on it, maybe staff can comment how the enforcement actions work, but what my general understanding is 1 week would be okay because you have 20 days as the appeal period for this application. Ms. Carzola, please correct me if...
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you're certainly correct. I would encourage the residents to work with bylaw enforcement on a compliance deadline. That is where the action lies. Right now, the committee is not giving any kind of approval or endorsement for the tutoring business at all. So that remains now between the property owners and city staff to work out a compliance timetable for that and whether some leniency can be provided by staff given the special circumstances of exams coming up. I know that the property is due for reinspection, so perhaps they can come to an agreement on a date for reinspection with bylaw enforcement.
You understand, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't think so that's a longer time. The person, the city inspector, whoever is dealing the situation now, they can obviously look into it and you can set up the inspection time accordingly and stuff. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed with the staff recommendations. Motion to...
Support staff.
sorry, not support staff, to approve with the conditions spelled out, the 4 conditions.
Okay, by Ms. Duffler, seconded by Mr. Cope. All in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Calling application A19-201, Kulwinder Singh. The property is located at 8124 Gore Drive.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
My name is Terrence Glover. I'm the agent from Urban and Mind Planning Consultants for the owner. We have reviewed the city's comments and their proposed conditions of approval. And in general, we support them. However, there's new information that just came to light this morning. We've been talking with the building department, so I'd like to share that with you, and that may perhaps or hopefully alter some of the conditions that are here. So this email just came through. I'm sorry I do not have a hard copy of it.
That's okay.
It is from Justin Crawford from the building department. He has said that I'll read it to you. This email is concerning the unsafe order regarding the existing structure on the back of the property at 8124 Gorewood Drive. The order was in reference to the rear portion, rear part of the building that was falling down. The rear addition has been demolished. A permit to demolish has been applied for. The structure that remains was not part of the unsafe order that was issued. The area that we're speaking of is this building here. That's the shed. It used to be a former garage years gone by. Here's the aerial photo of it. And generally speaking, that's the size of it. So the rear portion was in concern, and the front portion of the original garage was fine. Here's some pictures of it. Obviously, it's dilapidated. It had to come down. The front portion of the building, though, is fine, as confirmed by the building department. So when we refer to planning's concerns or conditions regarding condition number 1, that variance 2 be permitted, permit the accessory structure of the shed having a gross floor area of 188 square meters be refused. We'd like to revise that, acknowledging that the rear portion has come down now. The condition number 2, that the existing shed, that's the subject variance number 2 shall be removed from the property. So we have removed the concerning portion of that shed, not the entire shed, just for clarification purposes. And then number 7, this is where this revised variance comes in. Variance number 4, to permit a combined gross area of 217 square meters of the 2 accessory structures, the shed and the shipping container, be refused. We'd like to revise that to 125 square meters for the combined, because again, the back portion of the building, the lap tit had been removed. So I understand planning's concerns, and it's rightfully so with the information they had at the time that the building had to come down as per the building department. We've since clarified that the front portion doesn't have to come down. It's an existing structure, it's been there for years. And again, if you know the area, I don't have it with me here. The area is in transition from rural residential estate to industrial. Our plans actually have, my client actually has a pre-consultation application in with the city. We're actually going to go down today to get a date for that meeting. And we intend to redevelop the entire set of properties on Gorewood Drive. So when we ask for 3 years, it's a transition period, really, from what's there today to the transition to the industrial. There's some road realignment that has to be done. And the neighbors, actually not just this neighbor, but in the future, you'll probably see other neighbors as well. They want to use that property for transition purposes because the residential is slowly moving out of there. And we hope within 3 years that we'll have some approvals to redevelop that property. So what we ask for today and the revision at hand is essentially just to allow the transition of things to happen for personal storage of goods. Staff generally support it, except for that one issue about taking the building down. We've resolved that now. So I'd hope that you would support the variances as applied for. And revised.
Sure, we'll just get to the staff. Maybe this is something new for this department. If you just received correspondence this morning. Any members, any question, comment, concern at this point? Seeing none, anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this application? Seeing none, staff, could you please weigh in your comments? I read the staff report, but with this new information and what gentleman has just said, if we need some modification in these conditions, or if we are already aware about this, whatever this morning they said, they just got some more information.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we may need to amend some of the conditions that I'm going to read out just based on the new information, but I'll just read them as they're written, and we can, while Ms. Gorzel is doing some quick math, get to that. So staff will review the application and find that application A19-201 is supportable in part, subject to the following conditions being imposed. Number 1, that variance 2 to permit an accessory structure having a gross floor area of 188 square meters be refused. Number 2, that the existing shed that is subject to variance 2 be removed from the property. Number 3, that variance 1 to permit 4 utility trailers to be stored in the rear yard be approved only for a temporary period of 3 years. Number 4, that no utility trailers are permitted to be stored in the front yard. Number 5, that none of the 4 utility trailers are permitted to exceed 7 meters in length. Number 6, that variance 3 to permit an accessory structure having a gross floor area of, sorry, that should read 29 square meters, be approved only for a temporary period of 3 years. That variance number 4 to permit a combined gross floor area of 217 square meters for 2 accessory structures be refused. That all outdoor storage of materials on the property be removed and said removal be demonstrated to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services within 60 days of the final date of committee's decision. That the extent of the variances be limited to that identified on the sketch attached to the public notice. And number 10, that failure to comply with and maintain the conditions of the committee shall render the approval null and void. So I'm sure when committee made their site visits, you were able to see kind of the condition that the property is currently in. So what staff are trying to achieve with these conditions is essentially a cleanup of this property. So being understanding of the fact that this is currently subject to a development pre-consultation application, and is heading towards the ultimate development as the applicant has indicated, we are sympathetic to, allowing an interim situation. However, the appearance of the property and some of the, waste that's on site right now is more so what we are trying to kind of get rid of with these conditions.
Fully understand, and I guess it will be good time within this temporary period. The property owner and the agent can work with the staff for their another permanent plans. In terms for the wordsmithing and to be accurate is if you need 5 minutes of time, I can certainly do that, or if it's ready now, because I don't want to rush something. I know it's the last application, but still I want to just achieve good for everyone. If that is something staff is suggesting, we can come back in 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We would appreciate the 5-minute break. I do have some questions for clarification from both
You
the
need
applicants.
10 minutes or 5 minutes?
I think 5 should do it.
Okay.
Yep.
So recess for 5 minutes, and we'll be here back soon. Okay, we're back. Recess is over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time. To confirm the conditions as would be revised, that would be a revision to condition number 1. And that would state that variance number 2 to permit an accessory structure, shed having a gross floor area of 188 square meters be approved in part, and that following the removal of the unsafe portion of the building, the remaining accessory structure shall not exceed a floor area of 96.3 square meters. Then there's a corresponding amendment to condition number 2 that modifies the condition to read that the unsafe portion of the building at the rear of the shed that is subject to variance 2 shall be removed from the property. There's the correction of the typo in condition number 6 to change the variance associated with, the square footage of the trailer, the shipping container associated with variance 3 from 188 to 29 square meters. And then doing the math, we've got condition number 7 is modified to say that variance number 4 to permit a combined gross floor area of 217 square meters for 2 accessory structures, the shed and the shipping container, be approved in part, and that the combined floor area for both structures shall not exceed 125.3 square meters.
So you understand and accept these amended conditions?
We do. And we thank staff and.
No problem. You're always more than welcome for the greater good. And I hope your client, for the permanent solutions within these 3 years, they'll be able to achieve what they really want and desire.
We hope so
for
too.
the property. Committee members, if no further discussion, looking for a motion to proceed. Motion to proceed with the amended condition by Mr. Power, seconded by Ms. Duffer. All in favor? Approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No further business. Looking for a motion to adjourn by Mr. Koch, seconded by Ms. Duffer. All in favor? This meeting is adjourned.